All right. So Lyle, we want to hear from you. What you're going to talk about is a real big part of that saving of time and management of all the teachers and all the students that Paul was just talking about. So you go ahead and share screen and roll on. And thanks for being with us, Lyle.
Of course. Well, thank you for having us, Lilani.
Yeah.
It's good to see you. Good to be here. Good to be seen.
Yeah.
And let me get my screen up and ready. You can see my screen?
Yeah, I can. And I'm going to put myself on mute and take my video off. It's going to be all about you for now.
All right. Let me just make sure I'm sharing the right screen here. Do you see my PowerPoint slide?
Yep, I do. You might want to put it in full PowerPoint mode.
This helps me maneuver it this way, Lilani, but I appreciate it. Thank you. Well, Thank you, folks. Thank you. It's great to be here. We've been at the Learning Council a number of times in the past. It's always good to be here and participate. And Paul, thanks for all that great information. Yeah, you bet. We're going to hit on a lot of that information, from access to how to measure engagement to also how do you get your kids up in digital from day one? How are those accounts created? And the key that Paul said, a lot of the terminology that came up was timing. Time. How much time can you save? How effective can you be? And how do you measure engagement effectively and easily from both a teacher perspective and from an administrative perspective? So that's what we'll talk about today. This PowerPoint, you can tell I designed it. It is not fancy and it's just text. So that's what we'll talk about. 3 main points today. But before we get going, I'll just give you a bit of background about ClassLink. So we've been around 22 years. A lot of people joke, we were a 22-year-old startup. And that is true. It feels like a startup. We're an education-only company, K-12. We're moving a bit into higher ed, but our specialty is education. We've got 13 million users and climbing rapidly, a ton of school districts, again, and climbing rapidly, statewide deployments, and vendor partners. We have a lot of those. And what that means is, down the road, when we get into the technical, the time-saving part, the rostering and the account provisioning, that comes into play, and we'll talk about that. So we'll spend most of the time in the product to show you how other school districts in the Midwest, in Minnesota, Wisconsin, North and South Dakota are using us. But before we go, let me just give you an idea of what we do. So we do 7 things, and we do them very well. We do single sign-on, so you see there as an example the Chromebook, and once the kids log in, all their applications are there based on who they are. I'm a 2nd grader, all my applications will pop up on that launch pad, and then I can one-click into that. So hopefully that reminds you of the phones that all these kids are carrying around nonstop, and that experience is what we based our design around. Access to files. If schools and students and administrators are still storing their work on a school shared network drive, we can provide access to that anywhere, anytime, and on any device, just like you would expect on a Google Drive as well. Analytics. To Paul's point, how do you measure engagement? And how do you do it in an effective manner that doesn't take all day to figure out? We'll touch on that. We can give you analytics from a classroom perspective that a teacher can easily learn and master in a couple clicks. So you can quickly triage what your class is doing, who's falling behind, who's logging in, who's not, all that from one spot. In the upper right-hand corner, for the IT people on this call, we'll briefly talk about OneSync server. This is our auto account provisioning tool that will create those accounts in Google, AD, or Azure. This will create your internal accounts, and this will pull from your SIS or any other data source that you have and create those accounts. And then Roster Server, the second tool, is the tool that will create those external accounts, those accounts to McGraw, to the Pearsons, to the Nat Geos, those type of companies. And then finally, for other stakeholders in the district, in the lower right-hand corner, a parent portal. This has really blown up in the last year, of course, with the 1 year, March 13th anniversary of COVID hitting. And parent portal gives that parent that same experience that your students, that your staff, that your administrators have. Your parents log in, and they have all the applications that they would need as a parent to be an engaged, informed parent in that district. So if they want to click into Infinite Campus or Skyward, or if they need to pay a bill, if you want to forward on a message to them, you can do it that way. Easy access. You take the guesswork out of where do I need to go. You take the guesswork out of how do I log in? You take the guesswork out of what do I need to log into? And then finally, a public portal. This is really coming into play in Illinois. In July of this summer, Illinois is going to be hit with some new data and privacy law regulations that the public districts are going to have to comply with. And that is list the applications the district is using, who's using them, what they're used for, and then a privacy policy for each one of those applications. So we can help with that. All right, enough with me rambling on here. Let's get into the product. And so once your students open up their browser, they'll be taken to a login page much like this. Note that you can brand this login page to the district colors, to the district mascot, to the district messaging, and then you're also going to be able to pick which way your students can sign into ClassLink. So that's great because your little ones, your kindergartners, your first graders, even your older students that may have dexterity issues and can't key in, they have numerous issues on how ways to log into ClassLink. One of them being the QR code, which I will show you. Another is facial recognition, and we'll show you an example of that QR code. So as I go through these, some of the districts, I'm in Milwaukee. This is, I apologize to my Minnesota people. This is Green Bay Public Schools, home of the 13-time world champion Green Bay Packers. This is how Green Bay Public School District students log in. They log in with a quick card, Google, or their school credentials. Also, if you note, they can push out, they can have a banner here with an announcement that they can change at any time. Sioux Falls has quick card, Google, and then their school credentials. This is White Bear Lake, I believe. Quick card, Google, school credentials. Dickinson, Harrisburg. So you get the idea here. This is Hopkins. And so you get the idea at Rochester, Minnesota. You get the idea on how various districts will brand and how they allow their people to log in. I'll show you what that quick card login looks like real quick. And so in a matter of 10 seconds, you can get an entire kindergarten class in, which many kindergarten teachers, after they see that, they cry. They're not crying because their kids can't get in. They're crying because they can't. And that's what ClassLink is all about. So I will log in with Google, and we'll discuss specifically access. You know, what is this? How does this affect your access? We'll talk about engagement as well as digital from day one, that rostering, that auto account provisioning. And I'll show you how districts are using ClassLink to touch on that. So let me switch profiles here. I'm going to switch to a teacher. Of course, you have different profile options here. An administrator has different rights than a teacher, than a student would. I'm right now as a teacher. And so if you view this is our launch pad, we call this. And if you view these applications and folders as core, these are the non-negotiables. These are the things that you're going to need to be able to access and use if you're going to be successful in whatever role you are. In this case, I'm in as a teacher. So let me sign in and I'll demo quick access into Canvas. What do I need to log into? Well, Canvas was on my launch pad. How do I log into it? I just one-clicked in. Let me click into Discovery Education. So in a matter of a couple seconds, I've logged into 2 accounts unique to me. Those are personal private accounts unique to the student or that teacher. So those are examples of the single sign-on. The applications themselves, let's talk about what we're looking at here. On each one of these applications, you see the lock, and then you see a ribbon and key. That ribbon and key signifies that that's a password-protected site, most likely pushed out from the tech team. And then the lock indicates that that application is not going anywhere. So sometimes you might have a sweet kid that doesn't want to do his homework, those little devils. I'm sure we all have familiar with them. And they're not going to be able to accidentally delete their application because you pushed out and you locked it. All right. And so the same thing goes with folders. You can organize this launchpad as you best see fit to the district's needs. So many districts will push out to their students and staff library resources, traditionally underutilized tools, and they're underutilized because people don't know you have them. And if they do, they can't log into them. You push them out this way and the usage skyrockets. And we know this because of the analytics. And we'll get into that in a bit. How about HR links? You push this out to just your staff. You cut down on the calls on what do I need to log into for my medical, my dental, my vision. It's all here. How do I log into it? I one click in. So you can push out folders to your groups. You can push out folders to an individual if you'd like. You certainly can customize this Launchpad down to the individual student. I'm going to pause there. Are there any questions? Let me see if there are any questions that have come up in the chat box here. Doesn't look like it right now. If you have any questions, folks, take advantage of the chat box. So that's the Launchpad. These are the non-negotiables. Now, after COVID hit last year, a lot of companies were giving free trial runs, and it was kind of the wild, wild west on trying curriculum out in districts. And that was great, but depending on where you sit in the district, it might not have been that great. It might not necessarily align with the curriculum that you're using. So you want to limit that. Or from a security standpoint on the digital side, you know, a lot of these tools may not meet the security and privacy needs and regulations of the state or your district. So this is a great way to kind of limit what the students have access to. And as I said, this is the Launchpad. These are your core non-negotiables. If you had some supplemental things that you wanted to have the students have the ability or freedom to add to their Launchpad so they can customize a bit, you can use what we call the application library. And this is where our 6,000 applications live. You click on here. Now this looks a bit busy because we have it set up to demo, but know that you can customize this to the school district needs. So many of our districts will create an elementary library, a middle school library, and a high school library, and then drop in all the pre-approved supplemental things. So not only does that cut down on the calls to the teacher or emails to the teacher from the student, hey, can I add this? It cuts down on calls to the technology or curriculum teams. Can I add this? If it's in here, you can. And if it's not, you can't. It's just that simple. So you can give the students freedom, yet in a way limit what they do online. So that's the way the application library is used to limit and then also contain the data and privacy concern that so many districts are dealing with now. The next thing, as far as engagement goes from a teacher perspective, is this tool. It's called My Classes. And this example, I believe, is going to be from an elementary school perspective. You know, of course, our elementary teachers, God bless them, hardest job in education. They have their classes and they're teaching cross curriculum. So math, science, social studies, English language arts. In middle school or high school, this may be first hour, second hour, third hour, fourth hour. But I'll show you how districts are using this. Teachers are using this to measure just their students' engagement easily and from one spot. So I'll click into, let's say I want to take a look at my math class and see what my kids are doing. So here's my math class. I can push out an announcement to just my students. Here are those applications that I use to teach this respective math class. And I could one click in. And this plus here, this is an option that district leadership would want to talk about, but you do have the option to give your teachers the ability to push out websites to their students. And how districts are using this, let's say I'm talking about ancient, our social studies department is talking about ancient Greece. And I'm in math and they want me to talk about ancient Greek mathematicians so we can cross teach. I could push out a website to that topic if I had a specific one. I could push that out to the students. And then when that unit was over or that lesson was over, I could take that away. This is just something optional that you could provide your teachers, but it is just know that it's there. Discussion boards. Right after COVID hit, districts were really looking for as many ways as they could to keep in touch with their students, because we all know if you have 10 ways to keep in touch with them, some of the students and some of the parents might not be using one of those ways. So you're always looking for additional ways to keep in touch with them. And the discussion board was added because of requests we got due to that. Now, we're still in my math class. Here are my students. It's a dream class. I only have 6 or 7 kids. Good for me. And then on my right here, if I clicked into that, that would take me into the analytics for each one of those students. We'll get to those analytics. I'm just going to get there from a different roadmap. We'll go to logins. I'm going to move this back to last week. And so these check marks a year ago, after COVID hit and we were all in full-blown remote, districts, needless to say, as Paul had talked about in his session before, we're struggling with ways to not only measure engagement, but measure attendance. And this was added early on. Certainly not a perfect way to do it. It is one of the ways that districts were coordinating to come up with a way on figuring out attendance. So the check mark simply indicates that that student logged in and nothing more. So in the beginning, early days, people were using this. How teachers are using this now is quickly to triage their class and see if there's a student or a block of students that is falling behind. And falling behind would mean maybe not logging in at all. So there may be an issue here. Modesta is only logged in once. So that might possibly be a reason for me to reach out and see what's going on. Is there a device question? Is there a wireless network, a hotspot issue? What's the issue? I've got some of the data to start driving my decisions right here. The key is easy to get to and easy to digest. Now, this is good and great, but this is even better. Same students, same week. You're also getting the days that those students logged in, but not only the days they've logged in, but the engagement. To Paul's comments in his session just prior to me, what are these kids doing? Are they logging in? And okay, if so, what are they doing once they're logged in? So right here we see this student has spent 5 hours and 24 minutes online back on March 9th. All right, let's see exactly what. So that is a nice way to measure from a teacher perspective. It's pretty powerful just to keep a thumb on the class and figure out what's going on, who's falling behind, who's staying, who's keeping pace and who's excelling. Are there any questions as far as this goes? All right, then we'll move on. So that was engagement from a classroom perspective. Let's move on to engagement from a district-wide perspective, the big picture. And the big picture is available to administrators. And so I will switch to an administrator's role here, and I will click into analytics. And this takes us to the analytics dashboard. The previous screens were from just my individual classroom. This is the full picture of a district. So this coincidentally is from a large district in Florida. And what you see here are historic data as well as real-time data. I'm going to push this back to last year because there's a pretty neat story to tell on this. So I've set this to last school year. And you'll see historic and real-time. So logins today, 12,690 logins this month. This district, by the way, has over 200,000 students. So these are real numbers. Logins this year, and you've got historic as well. This district has been with us 3 years, and because they have, you get the historic. And in this case, you hover over it, and if you can see that, it might be too small, but in January of 2021, the district logged in 7.1 million times. In January of 19, it was 5.8 million times. Now, that's not because the district grew by 1.2 or 3 million kids. That's because the access is there. It's been ingrained in how to access these tools. The students know how to do it. The staff knows how to do it. The administration knows how to do it. Because it's so easy to do, those logins have been driven up. Now, last year, of course, started out normal, or as normal as any school year can start, right? And so I'll pull these up, and it's pulling from a large district. The year started last year back in September. Let me blow this up. And so the year starts, they're back in September. They're in first semester. They're in Thanksgiving. Christmas is here. And now they're in the second semester. and then let me back it up here. I think I have the wrong year. Last school year. You'll see where COVID hit. And it's interesting because after COVID hits, it drops, of course. But this district, as I mentioned, had been with us. And the drop is not too long. They rebound pretty quick. So school year started. Here's Thanksgiving. Here's Christmas. Here's where COVID hit. They went to spring break after COVID. So everything to the left is pre, everything to the right is post. They didn't really have much of a drop off. And districts that didn't have something in place, once they dropped down, there was a slow curve back up, which I think does a nice job of showing the value of having easy access in place, some type of system. Hopefully it's us, but some type of system where you can access your applications easy, regardless of who you are. All right, so that's that. You want to find out which applications are being used the most, all from one spot right here. I've got them all ranked in order from most launched to least launched. I can reverse this and it'll reverse that launch. So this district obviously lets their teachers add applications, and then for whatever reason, those teachers forget to use them, or they just never use them for whatever reason. Let's go back here and reverse that. All right, so that's some of the analytics. Schools, you can take a look at the schools by login counts. You can compare schools. So you might have a high, an on, and a low and compare them. It's particularly helpful at the grade school level for math or reading or science. It's not scientific by any means, but again, it'll give you that data to start exploring, what type of changes you may need to take to, get that below average school back up and running to average or above. A heat map. This is for engagement as well. So this heat map will tell you the percentage of unique users logging in. A great way to quickly triage if you're an administrator, if there's an issue here. So here, that might be an issue, right? There aren't that many students logging in, but then I, as an administrator, I'm just painting a picture here. I know that Beta is a year-round school, and last week they were on break. So that's the reason why that's low. But this is how you would use that to determine engagement quickly from one view if you're an administrator, and then you can determine what type of action you need to take based on the data you see. Cost. This is pretty powerful stuff. Now we know that certainly budgets probably won't be exploding for the positive in the coming years, but this is a way to take advantage of the funding that you do have. So here are the applications being used. We know that as you scroll down here, you see some of the usual suspects. Now this is an example of how you would use this. Gale Virtual, we paid $10,000 for it. We pay for 1,000 seats, average $10. But year to date, for whatever reason, only 91 of those 1,000 seats, were accessed. That's not saying you don't need that. Maybe you need to redirect the professional development there to get that usage up. Or maybe it's a supplemental tool that everybody says they need. Everybody says they can't live without it, but the data is right here. Not everybody is using it. So this may be a nice way to whittle that down from 1,000 to perhaps 200 and save money that way. This is exactly how districts are using this to drive professional development, and then also whittle back some of those subscriptions and save some money that way. So quickly, that is a ton of stuff on the analytics, and I apologize for going through it so quick. There's just a lot of stuff there. Let me see if there are any questions. And I will put up my name and contact information after this call. If you have any questions regarding this, please don't hesitate to reach out. The last two things we need to cover are those two automation tools. So the first is Roster Server. And if you're a technology person, this tool will create your external accounts. So it will pull from your SIS, and then it will get that data to the vendors that you're using, and it'll create those external accounts. So in most cases, these vendors will set up that communication with a REST API. And if they don't have that REST API capability, we can set up an exchange, a CSV file exchange. And then also, regarding privacy and data, the arrows on the right side signify the fact that you can determine what type of data gets sent out to the vendor. If it's only an application being used in K6, do you want to send out K-12 data to them? You probably don't, so you don't need to. Do you want to withhold free and reduced lunch or race or sex, whatever the charting, whatever you're charting, you don't need to send that to them if you don't want to. And so that's what those arrows signify. Most of the time, districts will have this sync nightly. Usually our clients will have this hosted with AWS. It's just one less thing for you to do, and it's an easy spin up. So that's tool number one on automation. This creates your external accounts. The internal accounts is handled by OneSync. And this tool, again, will pull from any one of your data sources, your SIS, your HR. A new student comes into the district, and as long as they're entered into the SIS, that Google account will be created, that AD account will be created, that Microsoft account will be created. And likewise for a teacher, a new teacher comes in, that account will be created. A teacher resigns, that account will be deprovisioned as well. So the arrows on the right side here, let's talk about those as well. They go back and forth. So OneSync can talk to AD or Google, and Google can talk to OneSync. This is a great way to do a spring clean of your database. You'll have your new data here, you'll have your old data here, and you can create rules in this tool to move students from first grade to second grade to third grade, 12th grade to out of the system. So once those students graduate, you can move them to an OU folder, an inactive OU folder. This tool won't delete them. It'll just identify them into a folder that you want them to be dropped into, and then you can save that data as long as you want. But it's a great way to do a spring clean on your database. This is also the tool that will do duplications, will push out passwords, all that type of stuff that many districts are doing by hand right now still. So with that being said, we've got pricing. If you're interested in pricing, we price out based on users. And a full-time user is a student, a full-time classroom student, and a full-time classroom teacher. And we've got it priced out based on numbers. So we have it tiered out. If you're interested in any of that pricing, again, I will give you my contact information. But a rollout looks something like this. And depending on the time of the year and the size of the district, typically it's about an 8-week rollout. And with that being said, I know I'm coming up on my time. Leilani, are there any questions?
So we did have a comment from Nicole who said here in War Road, their IT director, and she had worked on onboarding ClassLink this past summer. And she said she's willing to chat with anyone who'd like to chat if they're considering you guys. So
great.
Thanks, Nicole. You're awesome.
Well, we certainly appreciate being here. We appreciate the job that you're doing, getting everybody together, sharing ideas. And to the people in the school districts, thank you again. It's been a trying year. A lot of people have been working very hard, and please know that work doesn't go unnoticed. I've got 2 boys in the system, and we talk about it every day. And I'm sure hopefully hear that from many other people as well. So on behalf of the company, thank you for the work that you have done, you are doing, and you continue to do this spring and this summer and next fall.
Yeah. Well, good. Well, thank you, Lyle. Very engaging. Appreciate it.
You bet. Good to be here.
Yeah.